We know that an if statement contains three components. First, the reserved word if begins the statement, then the condition follows in parentheses, and finally the statement to be executed if and only if the condition evaluates to true. A nested if statement exists when the statement of one if statement is another if statement. Nested if statements can add to the elegance of code when utilized effectively. Here's an example from the previous video. Let's remove the printline statement here that echoes back the user entered number, and we can remove the braces now since we no longer are using a block statement. So right now our program will tell us whether the user inputted number is even or odd. What if we wanted the program to also tell us if the user enters 0? We can do this using nested if statements, and it would look like this. Now walking through this, our first condition checks if the number the user entered is not 0. If it is, all the indented code here will be skipped, and control will transfer to the else statement here that will set our variable called flag to 0. Notice this is not an integer 0, it is a string 0, which is okay because we are not performing any calculations with this variable. We are only using it to store a string value. This string just happens to be 0. Now going back to the condition here, if the number the user enters is not 0, we proceed to the statement of this if statement. And the statement is another if statement, a nested if statement. We can see the condition is the original condition we had. The number the user entered will be divided by 2, and its remainder will be checked for equality with 0. If it is 0, the variable flag will be set to even, and if it is not, the flag will be set to odd. After that, the next couple lines here will be skipped, as those lines are only executed should the condition up here be false. The program ends by printing out whether the number entered is odd, even, or 0. Zero is actually an even number as well, but our program only wants to distinguish 0 from a even or odd non-zero number. That is a nested if statement. Now you can have nested if statements within nested if statements within nested if statements and call it nested ifception. However, utilization of nested ifs should be carefully planned and executed, as logic can get confusing to some while implementing them. Also know that each else will be paired with the most previous if in code. So for instance, if we remove this chunk of code here and run our program, if we type any odd number, the console will print that 0 was entered. That's because this else statement that sets the variable flag to 0 immediately follows this if statement that checks for a remainder of 0. So if the remainder is not 0, this statement will execute, which sets the flag variable to 0. Now if we run this program again and you type 0, you can see that the flag variable is never set. There is no else statement paired with it, since this one here is now being paired with this if statement. Using braces, we can force the pairing of if-else statements. Now, this else statement will no longer be paired to this if statement because it is outside of the braces. And because of that, this if statement is now paired to this else statement. Let's see what happens when we run the program. If we enter an even number, the console prints the number is even. If we enter an odd number, the console does not print whether the number is odd, even, or 0. And if we enter 0, the console prints that the number entered is 0. Now why doesn't the console tell us when we enter an odd number? It's because this if statement no longer has an else statement paired with it. And in the condition that the remainder of this evaluation does not equal 0, the flow of the program breaks out of the brace as this condition is not met. And we did not give instructions on what to do in the case that this condition is not met.